Keanu Reeves has always been famous for his restraint and modesty. His manner of communication with journalists, colleagues, and fans seemed so soft and friendly that few dared to ask uncomfortable questions in his presence. However, the world of cinema, and especially Hollywood, is arranged in such a way that sooner or later everything secret becomes clear. And if a public figure gives even a grain of a hint of inner experiences, the media environment inflates this grain to the scale of a major sensation. Many believe that Keanu, having faced heavy losses in life, developed a special philosophy that allows him not to lose his balance at any turn of events. However, no one could have imagined how unusual his reaction would be when, during one of the meetings with fans, he was asked a truly personal question that amazed everyone who was in the audience at that moment. That day, Keanu flew in for the premiere of a film in which he played a minor but very memorable role. It often happens. As soon as he appears even in a small episode, the audience immediately has high expectations. The film was presented in a historic cinema hall, where the press, critics, fans of art house cinema, and special guests gathered, people who managed to win invitations to a private meeting with the actor. The atmosphere was festive. The stars moved freely around the reception tables. Film critics crowded around the screens with trailers. Laughter and lively conversations were heard everywhere. When the host announced that a short press session with Keanu was about to begin, the audience rushed to the designated area with chairs and microphones. Everyone knew that he was the highlight of the program, although formally he came to support the film and not to advertise his participation. According to the event scenario, Keanu was supposed to first say a few words about working on the project, then answer journalists' questions, and then have a short chat with fans. And at the very end, there was an open mic option. Anyone could ask a question by raising their hand. The organizers, looking at the planned regulations, expected the conversation to be relaxed, but at the same time quite standard. They clearly weren't expecting some kind of provocative attack. And Keanu himself hardly imagined that just one question would result in a series of amazing revelations. Everything looked absolutely ordinary. He took a place on an improvised stage, greeted those gathered, and in a quiet voice, a little embarrassed by the public's attention, explained that he was happy to support his colleagues and share how the filming went. His speech was short, without any loud statements. He simply thanked the team, mentioned the director, and admired the cameraman's talent. But time passed, and it was time to answer questions from the audience. The first few questions were predictable. Journalists asked why Keanu agreed to play a supporting role, what interesting things he learned during the process, who he became best friends with on the set. He answered softly as usual, supplementing his speech with short stories about funny moments from the filming. Although there was some fatigue in his demeanor, everyone knew that he had flown in just the day before from another city, where he had given a press conference on his next project, and now he was back in the thick of things. Even with such a schedule, Keanu did not complain or try to fire up the audience artificially. He simply behaved as naturally as possible. Many in the audience looked at him with undisguised warmth, and some quietly whispered that they would like to ask the actor something more than banal questions about his future films. After all, everyone had long been concerned about his personality, character, and state of mind. But few people had the courage to directly dig in this direction. The reputation of a soft but closed person made Keanu a very difficult target for journalistic attacks. Finally, the press session was coming to an end, and the host announced, "We have literally just a couple more minutes. Who would like to ask something special?" There was a short pause, and raised hands flashed in the audience. The host handed the microphone to a young woman who was sitting in the front row. It was obvious that she was nervous. She was holding a piece of paper. Her voice was shaking slightly. She introduced herself as Diana and explained that she had long wanted to ask Keanu one thing, but had never dared. The actor smiled, nodded, inviting her to speak, ready for anything, but apparently assuming that the question would be about his work. However, Diana suddenly said, I know that you always avoid questions about your personal life and the losses you have experienced. But how do you do it? How do you keep the warmth in your heart, having gone through everything you had to endure?" A tense silence fell over the room. This was far from the kind of question one would usually ask at a public event. Although everyone has heard of the tragic events that have haunted Keanu, he almost never talks about them in detail. Not about the loss of loved ones, not about the periods of deep personal pain that have affected his worldview. As a rule, journalists either respect his privacy or are afraid to challenge him with such a question. But Diana asked the question gently, with sympathy and genuine interest, without a hint of sensationalism, and it took everyone by surprise. For a few seconds, the room was silent. People felt that the topic was too personal. Some had time to think that Keanu would politely refuse to answer, limiting himself to the standard polite wording, and the host would quickly change the subject. But what happened next shocked everyone. The actor, usually so calm and reserved, suddenly froze. His gaze became deep, as if he were looking inside himself. His eyelashes fluttered, and it seemed as if he was about to say something short, but instead he took a small breath, ran his hand through his hair, and said quietly, "You know, sometimes the best thing we can do is just remember that life goes on and never stop loving." He said this in a completely unactorial manner. His voice was filled with sadness, mixed with some kind of quiet determination. The audience froze, and the host had no choice but to let this moment unfold. Diana felt that she had touched something very fragile and was about to thank and shut up, but Keanu, to the surprise of many, continued speaking. He said that the pain of loss never goes away. It becomes part of a person, and the main thing is not to let it turn into bitterness or despair. He mentioned that what he had experienced taught him to appreciate every little thing: a minute of peace, the morning light, a smile from a stranger, because no one knows how much time we have left. The words flowed quietly, and people sitting more than 10 meters away were forced to stretch forward, trying to catch every word. Someone from the organizing team looked at each other in confusion. The format of the event assumed no more than a couple of minutes for an answer, but no one dared to interrupt this moving monologue. After all, this was a rare moment when Keanu allowed himself to open the curtain of his soul. Some of those present were already quietly sobbing. His words sounded so heartfelt. Even the tabloids, who usually tried to catch double meanings in his statements, did not dare to ask clarifying questions this time. The host was shaking slightly, holding the list in his hands and seeing that the atmosphere had reached some unusual tension. He understood that something important and very personal was happening now, and he could not interfere. At some point, Keanu closed his eyes and exhaled, as if trying to return to his previous even state, and then with a slight smile added, "Our life is not only grief, although sometimes it seems the opposite. It is also joy, friendship, love, care, humor, memories that we share with each other. If I had some universal advice, I would probably say, continue to look for these grains of happiness, even if your hands drop sometimes. You will hurt, but you are not alone." He looked at Diana, who by that point was barely holding back her tears, and quietly asked, "Did I answer your question?" The girl could only nod and thank him. At this point, the audience couldn't stand it any longer and burst into quiet but warm applause, as if afraid that too much noise would ruin the magic of the moment. No one expected such openness from an actor who was used to his personal experiences being taboo. Many later said that it was at that moment that they saw Keanu not as a star from action and fantasy films, but as a person who carries his own inner burden, but at the same time knows how to give light to others. The faces of some viewers showed amazement. They came to hear stories about a new film, but received a lesson in humanity that didn't even require any additional explanation. Realizing that the situation threatened to overshadow the entire format of the press screening, the host tried to gently return the atmosphere to more familiar tracks, but the audience was still in emotional tension. According to the plan, Keanu still had a minute left for the closing remarks, and he seemed to return to his usual reserved manner, thanked everyone for their attention, expressed hope that the film would be liked, and that the team put a piece of their soul into it. He said a few warm words to the director and cameraman, after which the organizers announced a break, during which the audience was invited to go to the foyer, drink coffee, or take pictures near the banners. But people did not disperse. They approached the barrier, trying to pass Keanu notes, flowers, small gifts. Someone begged for a short photo. Someone just wanted to shake his hand. And according to eyewitnesses, he did not refuse anyone, as long as he had time and energy. But the main thing that could be read in his eyes was gratitude to people for the fact that he was not left alone when he finally decided to open up about his pain. Later, when the event was over and the actor was about to leave the hall, Diana herself approached him. Her voice was shaking with emotion, but she wanted to say that after his words she understood something important about her own losses and was immensely grateful for such sincere words. Keanu smiled, raised his palm, inviting her to smile too, and quietly said, "It will be hard, but hold on. We are stronger than we think when we have other people around us." These words were almost a revelation for the girl, because by her admission, she had withdrawn for a long time, believing that pain should not be shared with others. Fortunately, at that moment she realized that even a Hollywood star with a colossal baggage of fame and skills is not shy about talking about her feelings and acknowledging human vulnerability. When information about what happened at the press conference hit the media and social networks, a flurry of discussions unfolded. Some caustic commentators claimed that it was a well-thought-out PR stunt designed to stir up interest in the new film. But most of those who were there in person stood up for Keanu. No, it was too personal, too genuine to be a sellout moment. Especially since the film itself was hardly promoted thanks to his name, and the producers were only hoping for the effect of a pleasant addition, because viewers are always happy to see Reeves, even in a cameo. A number of bloggers and fans noted that the actor included words of comfort in this speech, which Keanu himself might need, but at other moments in his life. It was not a monologue, but a dialogue with each of us, those who were in the hall wrote in the comments. On various fan forums and in social media groups, people shared their stories of loss and hardship, inspired by the artist's words. Someone created a video clip of his short performance, added subtitles and theme music, receiving hundreds of thousands of views and hundreds of grateful responses. And when one of the TV channels wanted to show this excerpt, it faced the fact that it did not have an official recording. After all, the event itself was filmed only on amateur cameras. They had to negotiate with those who had at least some quality materials. These shots with excitement and warmth in Keanu's voice were then broadcast on the evening news, attracting a record number of viewers. Coincidentally or not, a wave of respect and admiration flared up around Reeves' name. Although it would seem there is nothing to surprise with, the world is already accustomed to his reviews of modesty and goodwill. Now many have discovered that behind this modesty lies a deep inner experience, which he, albeit rarely, is ready to share with people. A few days later, a well-known journalist named Stephen McGurty interviewed Keanu briefly over the phone, trying to return to the topic of those heartfelt minutes at the press conference. Stephen asked, "Do you regret opening up like that? After all, people tend to seek sensations and inflate personal things to the scale of public property." To which Keanu responded in his usual manner, "I don't think I did anything special." We all have so many feelings inside, and sometimes you need to talk about them out loud so as not to choke. I just don't often find the right situation for it. Diana asked a sincere question, and I couldn't just brush it off. I hope I was able to help someone. This answer once again emphasized that he had no ulterior motives, and if he shared something personal, it means that he really felt the need to do so. Perhaps this is where the true depth of his personality lies. He does not look for where to win additionally, but simply lives, supporting people when possible. Sometime later, when the film premiered in several cities and the online discussions began to die down, an interesting publication from that same Diana appeared on one of the fan sites. She said that before meeting Keanu, she had lived in a state close to depression for a long time because she had lost a loved one several years ago. She wrote how those few minutes of communication literally turned her world upside down, and the words about how pain remains a part of us, but should not turn into our prison, helped her reconsider her attitude to what had happened. Moreover, she was inspired by the idea that life goes on and you can give good to others, even if you yourself are wounded. According to Diana, she signed up for a volunteer group, began to spend more time with relatives, and was not embarrassed to talk about feelings. This is a small human story, but an illustrative one. After all, this is how sincere words work. They can give impetus even to those who have almost lost hope. For Keanu himself, this event did not seem to be anything out of the ordinary. He continued to participate in various film projects, gave interviews about new roles, avoided detailed conversations about himself, and did not position himself as a spiritual teacher. However, all the people who were at that press conference unanimously claimed that they would remember that reaction to the unexpected question for the rest of their lives. Numerous articles in fan communities noted that it is in such moments that the true value of public attention to celebrities is revealed, when it gives someone support and an example of kindness, and not another reason for malicious rumors. Don't think that Keanu has suddenly turned into an open book that can be easily read and understood completely. He still remains a person about whom there are many contradictory rumors. Some consider him almost a hermit in the metropolis. Others attribute to him incredible generosity on the verge of self-denial, and still others see him as just a boring guy without a bright personal life. But hardly anyone can argue with the fact that this person has a special charm of vulnerability and inner depth. If he decides to speak, he speaks straight from the heart, without choosing the correct wording for the sake of PR. And that is why millions of people around the world value him not only as an actor, but also as a rare example of humanity in an industry where it is sometimes difficult to separate sincerity from acting. And so it was that day when an unexpected question about his personal journey through grief and loss was asked, and Keanu, against all expectations, laid bare his pain and hope to the public. His reaction was a real shock for many, forcing them to look at their familiar surroundings differently. Perhaps it was precisely with such a quiet and simple message, "We are all suffering and we all need light," that he inspired people. After all, sometimes, in order to change at least one human world, a few sincere sentences are enough. This story quickly became one of those that are passed on for a long time in fan circles, legends where reality and speculation are intertwined, but the main thing is to preserve the essence. The point is that even one short conversation can change our understanding of the actor, ourselves, and how important it is not to withdraw into our pain. And if Keanu showed this example, it means that he truly believes in its effectiveness. Many hope that in the future he will dare to share his thoughts about life even more deeply. However, knowing his character, one can assume that such moments will remain rare and valuable accidents. He will not turn personal revelations into a show, because it is more important for him to preserve that fragile silence in which genuine feelings are born. But that is precisely why, when such a moment suddenly comes and Keanu dares to take off his usual mask of polite detachment, the result is many times more impressive. It is difficult to say how long such a memory remains in people's hearts. Perhaps, for someone, this particular incident will become a turning point in understanding how, with the help of simple words, a person is able to pull another out of the abyss of hopelessness. Or maybe someone will simply take with them a warm impression of the magnanimous actor, who is ready to answer the most difficult question without defending himself with a cliched, "no comment." But one way or another, the story of how no one expected such a sincere reaction has already earned the right to be included in the list of amazing moments associated with the personality of Keanu Reeves. Now that you know all the details of this impressive scene, I would like to sum it up. We see that even the briefest moment can contain colossal power if a person speaks from the heart. Keanu's act is a reminder to all of us Do not be afraid to ask questions that really concern you, and do not be afraid to answer them honestly, because sometimes it is these conversations that restore someone's faith in the best. And if this story touched you, if you feel that sincerity and kindness can change the world for the better, then be sure to support this video with a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Perhaps you also have stories about unexpected questions that awakened real depth in people, or about actions that change our reality. Your stories are important because they remind us all that every day we can become a little more human and a little more sensitive to each other.